So the film showed the effects of the siege, it showed the war crimes, it showed a lot of things that people in this room probably are aware of, if not the the minute detail, then the bigger picture. It showed how the effects of the siege were really exacerbated 1,000 times by the bombardment and the massacre. It was particularly, I think, interesting to see, or telling to see, the state of the hospitals. You could see doctors trying to work, but with what little equipment they had to do it. And I could tell you it's still the same now. I've been into probably one of the best equipped hospitals in central Gaza, and it's bare. The people are very determined, they're very cheerful, they're very hospitable, they're very friendly. They're very determined to keep on working, but they've got very little to work with. So the Viva Palestina convoy was the third one organised by the organisation. We set off at the beginning of December, and after a lot of aggravation and toing and froing with Egypt, we did finally get into Gaza and deliver most of what we had come to deliver 5 weeks later. So we delivered medical aid, we delivered vehicles, and we broke the siege, which is itself a criminal act. The siege is a crime. Never mind the war, the siege before and since is a crime. It's collective punishment. It's absolutely banned under any kind of humanitarian international law, and by any kind of norms of common decency. 1.5 million people in basically an open prison, gradually being cut off from all of the necessities of life, and particularly since that bombardment, being denied the ability to rebuild their lives, to fix all the broken infrastructure, so that now something like 85% of water in Gaza is not drinkable. What should be drinking water. The sewage system doesn't work properly, electricity cuts happen every day. The amazing thing actually when you go into Gaza is how it doesn't feel like a disaster zone. You hear about, or you see what's happened in Haiti, you see how 3 hours of electricity cuts in New York and the place goes to pieces, right? And there's looting everywhere. Everyone's kind of taking their chance. The amazing thing in Gaza is it's totally not like that. Despite how little people have got, you don't feel like if you put something down it's going to be nicked. When there's electricity cuts, people aren't raiding. It's a very civilised place. Actually, they're a very dignified people, and their response is a collective response, not an individual response, despite all the pressure that's on them. And that's really something that you come away with. We were there for a horribly, horribly short amount of time. Egypt was so angry with us for all the publicity, bad publicity we brought to them. And they really, really, really did not like Viva Palestina by the end. They promised we'll never be allowed back. We were all deported fairly rudely. And one of the ways they took their revenge was to kind of muck up our entry. So we didn't arrive as a convoy, we arrived sort of, piecemeal in little bits over the space of, about 12 hours. So maybe the first vehicles, it's only 40 miles down the road from the port we arrived into, the Rafah crossing into Gaza. And the first vehicles probably crossed over the border maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and the last ones were arriving 3 or 4 in the morning. So you can see how, so there was no kind of big arrival at the end of all of our kind of travails. And the same with our leaving. They told us we could have 48 hours. In fact, it was basically a day we got. And the second morning, we thought we were going to be going off to have a look at Gaza, and no, we were evacuated to the border, and then kept at the border all day when we could have been in Gaza. And then at night, again, evacuated on buses straight to Cairo airport, and made to stay there with our passports confiscated, until basically we were booked onto flights and kind of shipped out. But people weren't even allowed to go to the toilet without a policeman who was holding their passport. We weren't allowed to go anywhere in Egypt. We weren't allowed freedom of movement even in the airport. The Egyptians were very, very angry with us. But the reason is that we were successful in bringing solidarity to the Palestinians, which is what they will tell you they need much more than the aid itself. The aid that we're able to deliver, it's not even a sticking plaster. You know, it's so small. What they need is not aid, what they need is the siege breaking. But part of breaking the siege is keeping alive the issue, which our media, you'd think from our media that there is no issue. You know, that it's not reported anymore. And so keeping the issue alive and, you know, bringing media focus onto it is a big part of the mission. And although there was such a media blackout on the convoy in the West, in Britain in particular, in America, we were very successful in bringing media attention in the Middle East and in most of the rest of the world, in fact. But in the Middle East, we were a massive story, and particularly once we got to Aqaba in the south of Jordan and had been refused entry into Egypt, for the next 10 days, every bulletin on Al Jazeera pretty much led with the convoy. And people in the shops, in the cafes, in Jordan, in Syria, all over the Middle East, they knew more about the negotiations than most of the people on the convoy did, because they were getting hour by hour, blow by blow kind of information about it. You know, what Egypt has said, what Galloway has said, what the Turkish Prime Minister has said, you know, what Israel is saying, etc., etc., etc. And, you know, it was a proper story. You know, we're so used to sort of, you know, you start to believe the press that you're just a little left field, you know, random, not, you know, minor interest sort of a thing. And it was really heartening that if you're sometimes in someone's, I was in the house of some Palestinians in a refugee camp in Syria, and I saw an Al Jazeera bulletin, and all the graphics and stuff, you know, they had showing the route where we'd come and where we were going, and how many vehicles there are, and, you know, what the route has to be, and, you know, all these sorts of things they were showing. It was really heartening, and it really showed up for the people on the convoy, for people in the Middle East, and hopefully for the people at home who did know about it, the complicity of our media. You know, even the ones which are supposed to be not unbiased, like the BBC, or the ones who are supposed to be a bit left-leaning, like Guardian or Independent or whatever. You know, people have illusions in what you know, where our media's interests are, or, you know, that, oh, we need to spin the story differently, and then they'll be interested. You know, but it's nothing to do with any of that. You know, the media in this country are absolutely on board with the corporate agenda of this country, and that is behind Israel. And there was just no doubt about that by the end. You know, nothing that happened. You know, British aid convoy on Christmas Day denied, you know, the opportunity to take medicines, toys to children in Gaza. Not a story. What was the story? The snow. You know, the Pope. So that really, I think that was a big eye-opener for a lot of people. And Egypt's role, you sort of know that there are compliant regimes in the Middle East, and that's part of how the whole setup works and how Israel's able to keep its immunity. But it was really, really brought home to a lot of people, sorry, just what that role really is and how complicit Egypt is in the siege. That actually, if the border at Rafah was open, there couldn't be a siege. You know, Egypt polices that border, they keep it closed, they will shoot at Palestinians trying to get through there, you know. And now, especially now, at the time we were coming, you know, the news broke about what they're calling the wall of shame. So I take it everybody knows about that, yeah, that Egypt's now trying to cut off the tunnels, which in our press always talks about smuggling. You know, that's the most terrible thing. It's a crime, they're smuggling. It's like, well, the crime is the siege, obviously, and smuggling is how the tunnels are how they stay alive. And that's the last kind of lifeline they're trying to use to choke Gaza.